Welcome to Like a Bomb, a podcast about powerful women from the past and present.
Not fragile like a flower.
Fragile like a bomb. Episode 2 of Like a Bomb. Quite loud. Okay, I'm excited, I guess. Unlike my very nervous morning for this. Yeah, I'm Bailey.
I'm Jill, aka Mom.
Yeah. So we did Amelia Earhart and Margaret Sanger last week. This week, surprise between the two of us of who we're gonna do. And then the past week, I don't know, I've played lots of Minecraft, scheming, getting little Connor bike parts because this man doesn't have a car. He's trying to get jobs because he needs a job. So all of us are like, let's pitch in and get him a bike helmet, a bell, lights, which he already has, and other stuff.
He's going to be biking around Huntsville?
Yeah.
He's going to have strong leg muscles.
It's supposedly only about a 9-minute bike from the Publix to hit the place he's applying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those hills.
This one doesn't have a lot of hills directly with his apartment, thankfully.
Oh, okay.
But yes, he'll have some strong legs with that and get him some decent gear. Got more pictures of Felony, very cute cat.
Aww.
And then we're going to NASA in the park today.
I don't even understand what that would be. NASA in the park. Are they bringing the moon down?
No, they're just having booths and like bounce houses and things. One of our friends is running a booth because she works for NASA now. And she's really excited, and all of us are, big space nerds.
Hey, ask her if they're hiring for their education department, because they have one.
Okay. You have to go through USA Jobs for that.
But ask if they're hiring.
I'll see if she knows.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. Well, that can segue into the fact that I've spent most of my week having fun or not fun or scary times with ChatGPT.
Ew.
And we didn't do any. We did a little coding. We did some coding with some microbits. And of course, me and my partner, after we did what was required, we made a love meter. And I got best friend love. I don't know. And it's not done by, touch. I guess it's just random. I don't know. We didn't look too much into it. We just coded it so that when we touched it with the little thingamabobby and made the circuit close, it told us.
Did it evolve your body heat?
No, it didn't. Nope, because it's a microbit. So we just closed the circuit by putting the little pinchery thing on what it told us to pinch after we coded.
I see.
And I asked ChatGPT when I was playing with it at home to show Grammy what it was. And I asked her, what's the meaning of life? And I read it to her and she goes, yeah, I've been thinking the same things lately.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I think it's just we're moving. I'm moving. She's living part-time with me. Maybe she's contemplating the end because she's going to live with me. I don't know.
That's fun. Well, I don't think there's any other updates. Not a lot happens. Just work. It's hot. No. It's going to be 97 here.
I think, around that here. Yeah.
Drink lots of water. I have Gatorade for today.
I got to work tonight.
Ew.
That's okay. I can go get stuff done at school.
Yay.
So, if you want to tell me a story?
Sure, I can go first this time.
Okay.
So let me pull up my notes. You probably don't know this person. My person is Marsha P. Johnson, and she is one of the most prominent figures of the gay rights movements from the 1960s and 1970s in New York City. She is kind of known as I see it as like the face of Stonewall riot. Because when you see a bunch of pictures of Stonewall, you see her face. And so she was always sporting a smile. She was an important advocate for homeless LGBTQ plus youth, those affected by HIV and AIDS, and gay and transgender rights. So kind of just a big, short, who she was, big summary. Now into more of just her life. She was born August 24th, 1945, in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Assigned male at birth, Johnson grew up in an African American working class family. She was the fifth of 7 children born to
Ugh.
Malcolm Michael Sr. and Alberta Claiborne. Johnson's father worked on the General Motors assembly line in Linden, New Jersey, and her mother was a housekeeper. Marsha grew up in a religious family and began attending Mount Taman African Methodist Episcopal Church. That's a
Uh,
lot. And she remained a practicing Christian for the rest of her life. She enjoyed wearing clothes made for women and wore dresses starting at age 5. Even though these clothes reflected her sense of self, she felt pressure to stop due to other children's bullying and experiencing a sexual assault at the hands of a 13-year-old boy. Kind of forgot that was a thing, but yeah, there's sexual assault mentioned. Um, Immediately after graduating from Thomas A. Edison High School, Marsha moved to New York City with one bag of clothes and $15.
oh.
Yeah, that's impressive. So once she was in New York, she returned to dressing and clothing made for women and adopted the full name Marsha P. Johnson. The P famously stood for Pay It No Mind, a phrase that became her motto. She described herself as a gay person, a transvestite, and a drag queen, and used she, her pronouns. The term transgender only became commonly used after her death. According to her nephew, Marsha always maintained a close but fraught relationship with her family back in New Jersey, which makes sense, especially
The time.
as,
Also, the times. It
yes, and
wasn't.
majorly the times more importantly.
My generation's the first generation that it became somewhat acceptable.
Yeah, and even then, it's, oh my god. Some of the things of this week is just being afraid of becoming illegal in some regard for some of the people I love come possible another Trump presidency. Because if you would like to be
Yeah.
scared, look up Project 2025.
Yeah. I know I had heard something about it, but then a wonderful person I work with that was in the researchy thing that I'm a part of, she's like, "Have you heard about it?" And I'm like, "No." And she's like, "They
Well,
want to defund the Department of Education." And I was like, "What?"
mm-hmm. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, future is unknown.
Yes, it is still unknown, but it's just fun things. Just,
Yeah.
yeah. So, being trans and what was this time? She was, I think, in her 20s or so. Or no, not even 20s. She had just graduated high school. So, this was early
So
60s.
65, yeah.
Not even
65.
65. That would have been
Yeah.
20 because she was born in
Yeah.
45.
So early 60s.
Gay people still existed. They just still had to hide. And then for her being even more obvious, um, we'll get more into the fun of how she had to deal with that because while she was in New York, she was still persecuted um, for being who she was because New York still persecuted gay people and frequently criminalized their activities and presence. Their rights were limited and sometimes ignored completely. Having difficulty finding employment, Marsha turned to sex work, and she was often abused by clients and arrested by the police. She did not have a permanent home during this time and bounced around sleeping on friends' homes, in hotels, restaurants, and movie theaters. She also found work waiting tables and performing in drag shows. In 1992, she's quoted to having said, "I was no one, nobody from Nowheresville until I became a drag queen." So at least she had fun with the drag shows in the meantime.
Yeah.
And not long after moving to New York, then 17-year-old Johnson, so she graduated at 17.
Mhm.
Not even, so this is even earlier on. She
Wait,
met, huh?
what month was she born again?
August?
Okay,
August.
because yep, she started when she was 4 because they didn't change those laws until around the time you were existing that you they pushed it back. Like you could start school at 4 based on what month you were born in.
Okay. Well, her birthday was late August. She would have turned 5 pretty quick. Anyways, she was 17 when she graduated, like I was. And so not long after moving to New York, she met 11-year-old Sylvia Rivera, and Rivera is a Puerto Rican transgender girl, and the two became instant friends. Rivera later said to Johnson, she was like a mother to me. And as Johnson had done for herself, Marsha, she encouraged Rivera to love herself and her identity. She adored wearing colorful, fun outfits that she made from finds at thrift stores and discarded items. She was also often seen wearing a crown of flowers, and this was all Marsha's outfits. Now, as we all know her more for, her life changed when she found herself engaging with the resistance at the Stonewall Inn on June 28th, 1969. So once this comes out, it'll have been the 55th anniversary of Stonewall. Ironically, I believe it was the 50th anniversary of Stonewall that I went to my first Pride parade.
Oh, well,
um, Looking back at that, it's kind of funny.
yeah.
So the Stonewall riot began in the early morning hours, where police raided the bar and began arresting the patrons, most of whom were gay men. Marsha and Rivera, because it goes by their last names, arrived at Stonewall around 2 a.m., where Marsha said in later interviews the place was already on fire and there was a raid already. The riots had already started. There are many competing stories about what Marsha did during the raid at Stonewall Inn, but it is clear she was on the front lines, as we commonly see her the face of it. And like many other transgender women, she felt they had nothing to lose. They were not only angered by the police raid, but also the oppression and fear they experienced every day. In the wake of the raid, Marsha and Rivera led a series of protests, and the Stonewall riot galvanized the gay rights movement. And the first gay pride parade took place in 1970 after a series of gay rights groups, including the Gay Liberation Front, a more radicalized organization, and the Gay Activist Alliance, a more moderate and focused spin-off group, emerged. Marsha was involved in the early days of both, but grew frustrated by the exclusion of transgender and LGBTQ plus people of color from the movement, which is stupid because they're the
It's
people that started it.
yeah, and they're supposed to be an inclusive group.
Yeah, but people are still separatists, and
Yeah.
not fair. And with this, she actively spoke out about the transphobia in the early gay rights movement. In 1970, her and Rivera founded Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, aka STAR, and it is an organization dedicated to sheltering young transgender individuals who are shunned by their families. The two also began Star House, a place where transgender youth could stay and feel safe. Star House is still working today. I have their link up of one of the houses in Ohio with their mission to help take care of homelessness and other LGBT teens as a general community effort. And Star House was of personal importance to Marsha and Rivera, as they both had spent much of their youth experiencing homelessness and destitution. The first Star House was back of an abandoned truck in Greenwich Village. It then moved to a dilapidated building, which they tried to fix up, but the group was evicted after 8 months. Throughout the 1970s, Johnson's became a more visible and prominent member of the gay rights movement. She began performing with the drag group Hot Peaches. She attracted the attention of many, including the pop artist Andy Warhol, who included her in a series of prints in 1975 entitled Ladies and Gentlemen. In an interview Marsha did for a 1972 book, she said her ambition was to see gay people liberated and free and have equal rights that other people have in America. She wanted to see her gay brothers and sisters out of jail and on the streets again. In another interview, she said, "As long as gay people don't have their rights all across America, there is no reason for celebration." In 1980, she was invited to ride in the lead car of the Gay Pride Parade in New York City. Despite her joyous personality and ever-present smile, Marsha experienced hardship. She never let her personal setbacks stop her advocacy. In the 70s, she experienced a series of mental health breakdowns and spent time in and out of psychiatric hospitals. She also continued to engage in sex work, not knowing any other way to make money, and continued to get arrested. Unfortunately, in 1990, Marsha was diagnosed with HIV. She spoke publicly about her diagnosis and how people should not be afraid of those with the disease. On July 6, 1992, Marsha's body was found in the Hudson River. She was only 46. Initially ruled a suicide, many friends questioned that conclusion and suspected foul play. At the time, 1992 was the worst year on record for anti-LGBTQ plus violence, according to the New York Anti-Violence Project. Police then reclassified the case as a drowning from undetermined cause, but the community was furious that the police refused to investigate farther, and that many press outlets did not cover her death. At her funeral, hundreds of people showed up at the church. It was so crowded that people stood up on the street. And in 2012, the New York Police Department reopened the case into Johnson's death. And as far as I'm concerned, in this article, there is no other conclusion updating on her case. In 2019, New York City announced that Marsha P. Johnson, along with Rivera, would be the subject of a monument commissioned by the Public Arts Campaign, She Built NYC. The monument will be the first in New York City to honor transgender women. In 2020, New York State named a waterfront park in Brooklyn for Johnson. And now Marsha is the subject of many documentaries and remains the most recognized and admired LGBTQ plus advocate.
Yeah, I
And
think I've
that's
heard.
all I have for
Sorry.
her. She doesn't have a lot more told on her story, especially as a black woman. There's not a lot, but she did a lot for what she did in her time. And all the articles you find are the same thing with slightly different embellishments.
Yeah, I think I've heard something as a true crime aspect of it. I
Mm.
think I have. I think, but I'm not 100% sure, which that means it's definitely a story that needs to be out there for the world.
Yeah, you gonna do another podcast?
I don't know. At some point, I gotta sleep. Some point, I gotta sleep. Well, I
Yeah,
thought
not
that
wake
was
up
a.
nervous.
Yeah, well, I wake up nervous just because I exist. But I think that
Mm.
was a good story. You ready for mine?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, because again, I'm math minded, so I do very linear thought processes. Mine builds off my last episode, so the Margaret Sanger one. So she was
Cool.
the one who coined the phrase birth control. She was the push that got to the research that got us the birth control pill. And so this time I am taking it to more or less the controversial or just plain ethically wrong pursuit of with the testing, the invention, the testing, and all of the stuff that went into getting the FDA approval of Envoy, which was the first birth control pill. So, if you don't know who Margaret Sanger is, guess what? Go back and look into the original one. But some background
Yeah.
information, yeah, because
First episode.
I'm not repeating myself. So,
No.
some a little background. So, in 1907, the U.S. had sterilization rights, gave them to the government to sterilize what is considered the unwilling and unwitting. So, people who they thought were not responsible or smart enough to take care of their own reproduction rights. So, Indiana was the first state to actually enact it as a law.
Gross.
And in Indiana, by 1975, more than 2,300 involuntary sterilizations had happened.
That's a lot.
I remember,
one's a lot.
yeah, I remember learning, I want to say high school, middle school, because I don't know, the internet wasn't a thing. You had to have read it somewhere and learning about this and going, the government wouldn't do that. No, wait, what? So that was,
Good. The government's done a lot of bad things in the past.
yes, I was a naive person. 1927 Supreme Court case Buck v. Bell ruled that coercive sterilization did not violate the Constitution. So by 1929, 33 other states had similar laws as far as sterilization of the unwilling and unwitting. So nationwide, this is just records, 60,000 people nationwide had been sterilized. Most women were Black, Native American, poor, and even girls. This included men and women in prisons and psychiatric institutes. And I know that the first thing I read about it was people getting sterilized in psychiatric institutes because they deemed them unfit. It was the eugenics movement,
So,
basically.
when did they stop doing the lobotomies? Because this is all messed up more and tying together.
So well, they still do lobotomies.
Yeah, but I meant just because you weren't right in the head as a
ice
woman.
pick through the eye, like that. I don't know. That was
Yeah,
probably
stop it. No, we'll talk about it.
So by 1939, there were 400 community and state-based birth control clinics in the U.S. In 1941, the first official endorsement of the contraceptives publicly in the U.S. was by the National Council of Negro Women, which, by the way, is still an organization out there. I did look up their website. And in 1947, there was what was called the Nuremberg Code of 1947, which established the importance of informed consent. However, with this act, it was not considered legally binding. And so they had to do ones, I think, came out in the 60s. And then there was another one in the 70s that required more proof of consent, basically. So all of these things are happening around. You couldn't actually talk about, test, do anything for reproduction, contraceptives, even in the 50s. So we have some principal players that I'm going to give you their background information, being that this story is not about them little people. They did make advancements in like our reproductive freedoms. However, some of them did some really sketchy things to get us there. So
Lovely.
the story is about the people that this was done to, because I think that's the story that needs to be told. But we need to know about people involved. So again, Margaret Sanger, go back, re-listen to episode 1, or if you haven't listened to it, I'm not re-speaking. Catherine McCormick, and if you are of a certain age, the McCormick name is very synonymous for seasonings.
I don't even think that's just a certain age. Like, you just see that kind of everywhere still.
I think that there's some younger generations who buy all their food. I'm sorry, I'm stereotyping, all their food from HelloFresh. So how do they see it? That's not an ad. I'm not endorsing HelloFresh. I'm not sure. I've never tried their products.
There's also a bunch of other places besides HelloFresh.
Yes.
And you should still just have seasonings in your house.
You should.
Regardless.
But in case you didn't know, McCormick's is the name that is attached to International Harvest, which makes seasonings and all kinds of food products. She married the heir to that. Yes. So all of a sudden she became woohoo. She was a suffragette. Just.
Words are hard.
Yes. She fought for women's right to vote, basically. That's what she did. She had an MIT biology degree, which at the time, whoa.
That's impressive.
Her husband ended up being schizophrenic, and he had a sister. So there is a hereditary link between those kind of things. So they decided, or I feel like she had a little bit more conscious effort in it, to stay childless because she didn't want to pass that on. Plus she did take care of her husband. Like, he was institutionalized here and there, but she did take care of him. So that was part of her push for birth control pill. She also smuggled 1,000 diaphragms from Europe to Sanger's clinics. They were sewn into the linings of coats and clothes over years.
Wow.
Yep. She has some other credits that are pretty impressive for the things she's done. At the time, eugenics was a very powerful movement. So part of it was fueled by that. She met in 1953, one of our next players, who I'm going to mention in a minute, Gregory Pincus, who was, and I'll tell you more about them, through Sanger. And at that time, Catherine started funding his research into the magic birth control pill, starting with $100,000 annually to $180,000 annually to her death in 1967, which
Holy crap, that's more than my salary.
uh,
And that was
100
back in
1967 was
jeez.
100 was when she died, and she had been giving it for since 1953.
That's a lot of money.
I don't even want to think about that.
Yeah, I don't want no one to hurt time.
Whew, I can't go to the Dollar Tree. Anyhow, Gregory Pincus, he met Sanger in 1951 and then was subsequently met Catherine, which helped. But he was a Harvard PhD. He was a mammal reproduction specialist. He focused on rabbits and how their hormones interacted with eggs. He actually created a bunny embryo without fertilization, and this is in the 1940s
Wow.
and 50s. The press called it Franken Bunny, which I feel like should be a cereal. And he was looking into the birth control pill because he wanted the answers, the scientific answers, to say, okay, if we do this, what is the reaction and why do we have that reaction? He was in it for the pure science of it, not caring about the stepping stones to get there. Our next player involved is John Rock, and he was a physician and Harvard professor for over 3 decades of obstetrics and gynecology. He founded a new free infertility clinic as part of the Massachusetts General Hospital. So he tested a combination of synthetic hormones on low-income patients from the free clinic, just to see. He had this idea, and he ended up doing it as a test to say, okay, can we jumpstart infertility, people who are not having babies and it's just not happening? If we give them these hormones, can we like restart their system? It ended up actually working for a good percent of people in a trial. And then he reconnected with Pincus in 1953, and his focus was more in the population control. He didn't like that it wasn't the science of it. It was the let's help control the population.
Less ethical.
Yes. Well, they're all crazy. And we have Clarence Gamble, by the heir of Procter and Gamble, and we all know everybody's heard Procter and Gamble because you've seen commercials in your life.
Yes.
So was into eugenics for the birth control. Did believe eugenics, birth control, part of the movement. So Puerto Rico had government-funded birth control clinics as early as 1935.
Dang.
They were funded by the U.S. government through the New Deal programs. Okay, when government started pulling out their funding for these clinics, Clarence, who had, the Procter Gamble millions and trillions and stuff.
Lots of money.
Yes, started funding some of these clinics. And by helping fund these clinics, it helped have basically a source of people to help with the future clinical trials.
Lovely. So ethical.
Yes. Ethics were not a thing apparently back then.
They weren't as hard-lined.
Because the law didn't make them be ethical. So, and then there was the GD Cereal Company, which still exists. It is a Pfizer company, or Pfizer is a part of them. It was weird to figure out who owned what. So basically they're a drug or pharmaceutical company, and one of their big attributes and big thing is, hey, we are the first ones to produce and market the birth control pill. So those are our primary players of sketchiness. So, and this, what I actually thought this was cool. So In the 1950s, chemists found that a Mexican wild yams contained the compounds similar to hormones in humans. So this means that they didn't actually have to go take hormones from people. They had,
Animals.
yeah, like they could just do this, and it opened up so many more experimental and applicational properties to testing because they had it at their hands.
That's
Um,
wild to think that this could
yep,
just be from yams.
yep. I don't. And then it made me go, that classic debate: is a yam a sweet potato? Is a sweet potato a yam? Aren't they the same thing? No, they're not the same thing.
They're not the same thing.
Nope. I have lots of people tell me they are, but I was like, no, they're not. Anyhow, so their experimental trials. So Pincus and Rock got together and they're like, okay, we can do this. We've got funding, we have support, we got this. However, again, this was not legal reproduction. Anything having to do with reproduction and contraceptives was illegal. So they had to actually do it under the radar. So what they did is they first went to, in 1954, they went to 16 female patients at the Worcester State Hospital. This is a psychiatric hospital, to study the potential of, they said, to study the potential tranquilizing effects of the pill. They also tested in the infertility clinic on patients there, saying that it's a cure to infertility. But the 16 females, these patients were given pill prototypes, and they actually opened up women's uterus to see the pill's effect on ovulation.
I hate this.
Oh, it gets worse.
I'm sure it does.
So, Pincus, who I think was truly just like a mad scientist, truly just was in it for the science, he actually sent samples of the pill to his family members and said, hey, try this.
Oh, God.
And somebody called and said, I hate these side effects. This is what's happening, yada, yada, yada. And he just said, oh, I can send you another pill to help. And they were like, nope, I'm good. So that brings us to Puerto Rico and all that happened there. So it is a territory. So it does have U.S. government overseeing. However, it is different because it is a territory, and they had already had established birth control clinics. So they said, okay. Also, they had a very high number of women that were having what they deemed unplanned and not necessarily pregnancies they were able to provide for. So women were very excited to be a part of this. However, they weren't given a lot of information. And when I read this, it's like, and the educated women did not want to be a part of it. I don't think that it was people that were uneducated. I think it's people that are saying, okay, I need something to help control things in my life. And if this is a solution, that actually says I'm educated enough to know, okay, I know I do not want to have any more kids, or I don't want to have kids. And if this is a solution to that, I'm willing to try it. However, they did not know it was experimental. So, and
yeah, there's also the sales pitch and propaganda of, come take this magic pill.
Yes. I saw in one of the articles that I read over the Margaret Sanger in this, and it was like an ad that said, like, to advertise for birth control. And it was like, because we don't want the communists to take over. I'm like, oh, okay.
What?
Red Scare and all that. So
I know, but what?
So Puerto Rico also has had the established birth control clinics. In 1937, physicians were authorized to teach and practice of contraception. Like, this is way above, and years and years and years and even decades, I think, ahead of where, continental U.S. was allowed to do this. So they had all that stuff. So by 1955, 16.5% of Puerto Rican women were sterilized through the government-sanctioned sterilization programs. In 1955, 20 females from the University of Puerto Rico medical students were recruited for a small-scale trial. Half of them ended up dropping out mainly because of side effects, which were bleeding, blood clots, and nausea. But also, they had to every single day take their temperature and have a smear of their parts. Try to make this
So they
steak.
just had to have an exam every day.
Yes, every single
That's
day.
awful.
And we dread it once a year. So
Yeah.
also every month they had to have their cervix dilated to extract and test uterine tissue.
Ew.
Oh, and it gets worse. Some women had their stomachs cut open for doctors to see their ovaries in real time.
Why?
And some of the tests that they did for different tests on like men in psychiatric hospitals, they didn't even do with anesthesia.
Lovely. Doesn't also vasectomy not use anesthesia normally?
Well, this was different than a vasectomy.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how much more they were cutting.
I don't know. I
But
haven't looked into vasectomy. It's different parts than I have.
well, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know anything
I
about
mean,
that.
they don't give you any sort of numbing when they put an IUD in.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that either.
It's painful.
I'm sure it
And
is. It's a
things can
thing
go
stuck in your
bad.
arm. Things can go in your arm and move in your arm and
The IUD doesn't go in your arm.
wait. Oh, that goes down there. The other thing goes in your. You know, I don't know. Okay. So still in 1955, they began their large scale trial, and this was women that were in the Rio Piedras neighborhood of San Juan. It was a 3-month trial. It was about 265 women. These women were not compensated in any way, financially or otherwise. They only knew that the pill was to prevent pregnancy. That's what they were told. This little pretty pill, you take it once a day, you don't have babies. They did not know that it was experimental or that they were part of a clinical trial. They were given no safety information, no possible side effects or anything. And of course, where we're at, and I've been around for a long time. There's so many different options of the pill now. There are even non-hormonal ones. There's so many other options. Well, the hormones from the 50s were like super high, crazy levels, especially compared to where we're at in it today. But
yeah, there's much lower estrogen, and then you have progesterone now.
yeah, progesterone. So much higher levels than today. The side effects are blood clots, bleeding, nausea, depression, which of course depression wasn't even acknowledged until recently as a side effect. So 22% of them dropped out due to the side effects. They were kind of, anytime anybody said they have side effects, they were discounted as they were just women making up these things, having these side effects because they believed they would have these side effects. You know, of course, they had regular smears. Some of these women actually just sold them for money. Said, here's a pill that'll help you do this, you know, standing on, you know, talking to a friend and standing on their stairs and it's like, here, hey, you got some money? Because they needed money. Some of these women just needed money. So,
I mean, that's a common human problem.
exactly. So, you know, that's what happens. There are, and I saw multiple places that there are thought to be 3 women that died from it. However, autopsies were not performed, so they don't know the actual cause of death for the women. And
that's wild.
Yeah. And there isn't any more information about it. And of course, we are in Puerto Rico. Catholicism is very popular. And of course, we're talking birth control. So the Catholic Church was openly opposed to any of this. So,
but they're accepting of it now.
Well, you know, things change. This was the
things
50s.
Do.
This was the 50s. So in 1957, Envoy, the pill was FDA approved for menstrual disorders. It wasn't a contraceptive. It was not approved by the FDA for a contraceptive until 1960. And again, the laws only said for married people. And this was after further trials were done in Puerto Rico, Haiti, and Mexico. So some follow-ups to this actually happening in Puerto Rico is most women in Puerto Rico couldn't actually, after it was marketed, and, you know, you could go get a prescription and go to the doctor and go to the pharmacy and get your pill. They couldn't actually afford it. So the women that were even a part of the trial, and, you know, they had 3 months of, I don't have to worry about getting pregnant. They couldn't even get the
Yeah.
pills after because it was too expensive, which
Yay, big pharma. I'm trying to make money.
yes. So that really kind of left them without any help. So in 2002, 46% of women 18 to 40 were 44 with a study, they did a study, took, census, and women 18 to 44, 40%, 46% of them had been sterilized. It was a
Ah,
big push. It
great.
was a big push after the second baby. And only 19% of people who were of childbearing abilities, only 19% used the pill. Whereas in America, it is like, depending on what year you're in, it's 60 to 85% of women who are using birth control are using the pill. In 2008, 65.5% of pregnancies in Puerto Rico were deemed unplanned, but couldn't afford the option or felt comfortable taking the pill after the controversy and what they know now happened during the trials.
Well, at least there's other kinds, but the pill is honestly the easiest for
Oh,
at least also the healthcare of hormones.
yes. And it's so many different options that depending on who you are as a person, because like people who have migraines, you have to be very careful. They won't give you hormonal birth
You
control.
can't have estrogen.
Yeah, well, at the time when it was a first thing, they just would give you non-hormonal ones, like
Yeah,
20,
that's why
30
they
years
gave
ago.
me progesterone because
Yeah.
it's like you have migraines.
Yep.
Let's be a little bit on the safe side.
Yeah. I know when I first, well, not first, they asked about migraines and they said it had to be because they didn't separate them at the time because, I'm older than you and stuff.
You
But
are my mom. I
I
hope you're older
am.
than me.
I am. But that's the things that happen to women, those wonderful. We are very extremely thankful to those women who were just taken advantage of in Puerto Rico all those years ago, just so that they could get through the trials. I mean, great, we have the birth control pill, but there's so many
There's
better
lots of
ways to
unethical
go.
science.
And apparently Harvard has come out and said, we're adapting because Harvard was attached to these people, because both
Mm-hmm.
of them were attached to Harvard. And so they came out publicly and said, we are adjusting our research techniques, da, 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 da. I mean, it's Harvard. I don't know what they do. They're not going to talk to me. They're Harvard.
Hey, I mean, you never know. Just do a Loreline Roygs. Go drive up. 'Cause we totally have the ability.
Yep. Be like, hey, what's up?
What's up, Harvard? You wanna talk about the unethical things you did?
Yeah. They'll just be like, sorry, that's Yale.
Bye. Don't talk to us. We know nothing. We gotta have a big enough following to get to that. Of which, before we round out any of the episode, if anyone wants to make any suggestions of more ideas, like my mom has, or specific people to cover in future episodes, we have the email. It is likeabombpodcast@gmail.com. So our name, podcast@gmail.com. And then we'll eventually start doing that Patreon, do a little bit of silly behind the scenes clips and other little add ons. We'll figure that out as we go. Try and make some fun of this while also making it worth our time for if we have to get more expensive software or equipment. Because unfortunately, technology isn't always nice.
It's always expensive.
It is expensive for the good stuff.
Also, if you know amazing, extraordinary, awesome chicks in your life, yeah, I said chicks. Sorry, I call people dudes too. It's not a gender thing, but tell us, let us know. Like your grandma sewed guns into her dress and smuggled them across the border in World War I. Please tell us. That would be an awesome story.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be historic
No.
in big news media. It can be personal, family, fun little quirky stories, past and present.
I mean, I can tell you all kinds of quirky, weird stories about my mother and grandmother, who my mother just told me as I told her what I was doing today in my closet. Well, it's come out. You've already done one? No, it's not out yet. Well, let me know. I want to hear it. Okay.
Well, I have people at work that want to hear and things, so it's gonna be like, oh, you get to. It's like, oh, being vulnerable, but it's
uh,
easier because we're at home. We kind of forget that this is gonna be on the internet.
I'm literally in a closet. And
Yeah, you can come out of the closet.
yeah, Finn screamed almost the entire time. Poor little buddy.
No,
Well,
little baby.
you got anything else?
No, you can round us out.
Go do something extraordinary.